Hi everyone, and welcome back. In this episode, this is going to be one of my favorite ones. This is one of my favorite leaders within the higher education space or in the industry space. This is Linda Dunn. Billy Dunn. Linda, can you introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you, Justin. Thanks for having me here today. So, as Justin said, I'm Linda Dunn, and I'm the faculty director for the Supply Chain Management Master's Program at Georgetown University in School of Continuing Studies.
Thanks for that. So at Georgetown, do you all do anything in the area of sustainability and carbon emissions and carbon tracking, or what have you seen in that particular area?
Yeah, there's, first of all, just supply chain, there's tremendous interest in this area, right? And I would say that the program at Georgetown, and you know this from some background, right, is very focused on corporate social responsibility. So both from an environmental impacts and also social impacts, how does the supply chain play a role, and how can we improve both the environment and the social impacts using supply chain, thinking about supply chain. So really that is a major focus. And I'd say the university overall has done a lot of things. They've published it, with green energy, just a focus on sustainability overall. And that's really a part of, taking care of others in the world, sort of the Jesuit values that they have.
Excellent. So I know, all right, so for disclosure, I teach within the program at Georgetown as well. So here's that's one of the reasons why some of the questions will come up that's going to come up later on. But I know that you have some background in blockchain, and I know that we talk about how to integrate blockchain within the industry, namely within the supply chain space. So how do you see us leveraging this technology to make an impact from a carbon tracking perspective?
Sure, Justin. I think, anything that really needs to be proven, so to speak, is going to be a place where blockchain may play a role. And so right now, there's a lot of claims in sustainability. I'll even diverge just from carbon for a minute, but just sustainability practices. We talk about greenwashing, what's real, what's not. As many companies are so focused on zero carbon, their pledges, and what can they do and how do they measure really scope 3, which is the hard part, which is the one where supply chain is involved, right? They're going to need to prove it, and they're going to need to do it in a way that they don't have to keep doing the same auditing, so to speak. That's the biggest issue right now, is both the measurement, but then also the certification. And that's where I think blockchain will play a role with the certification. It is hard to measure. There's a lot, people don't have necessarily all the same definitions when they even talk zero carbon. What about embedded carbon, in the construction industry, and once it's already there? And so once the measurement and the definitions start to form, at least, stage 1 of it, because I think it will continually be refined, someone has to be able to certify that. So there's a lot of groups out there now, similar to when Sarbanes-Oxley came out, and you really, with GAP, had to prove beyond a reasonable doubt, right? Someone had to sign off on it, that the financials were correct indeed. And so with all that proving, which is where I think we are with carbon right now, then there's the audit statement, right? And for the most part, they're just doing an overall company. Here's the audit for the company. I think when you start to get with carbon, it's going to be by product. And to do that, you don't want to do it again and again and again. You want to say, I know the carbon footprint. And it might be that we actually have two pieces. This is the piece, basically before freight. Right? Here's the piece, this is what it is. And then there's a second piece that's associated with freight that might change for where the product is going. But the actual development and manufacture of the product and all the tier 2, tier 3 suppliers, the measurement of that is all put on a blockchain. It's certified. You can prove that with customer A, B, and C, because again, you have thousands of customers who want the same information. You can't do each one separately, right? And so I think because it's going to be at a product basis instead of just a company, you're going to need a way to have that audit, have it certified, and be able to each time present it. And I say you may separate freight because obviously products can be moved all around the world. So it's almost like when you have a price in supply chain, right? And it's without the freight, and then you add on the freight. So I think you might have the same thing. Here's the carbon measurement. Here's the blockchain that proves it. And then there might be another one that gets generated with the freight. So just some ideas.
I love it. I love it. And so I know that we're big on this. We hope that this is the utopian view, of this space. But so given the kind of the rails of this study, in terms of desirability and feasibility, given that you spend a lot of time in this space, given a lot of time that I spent time in this space, what do you think the desirability is for a solution like this for those in the industry? I know that's a broad statement, but think of the trucking companies. Think of those that do act sustainably. Think of those that are they're just primarily focused on money, right? What in your opinion, what's the desirability of something like this?
I think the desirability is going to differ by industry a little bit, and it's going to differ by, what's your role in the supply chain. So I think manufacturers, first and foremost, are going to be the most interested, just based on size, based on margin that they make. Those that have the ability, again, that don't want to replicate, yes, this product has this carbon footprint, right? And this has this level. I think you're going to see it first in the manufacturing base because it's natural there. After that, when you start to get to trucking companies, et cetera, that adoption would be afterwards, from my opinion, only because the margins for those type of companies tend to be thinner, right? It's like technology. Where does that get? Any technology, it gets adopted usually in industries that have larger players and have better margins. That's because they have the ability to put that in without hurting their P&L. And as a matter of fact, as it becomes required, I think the manufacturers will again see blockchain as a way to implement something without having the repetitive cost. Okay, it's going to cost me, I have to get audited, but it's one time. So that would be the savings from their perspective. The industries like trucking and again, maritime will come along over time. And again, maritime may be faster, but even, they've made a lot of money of recent, but there's been times in the past where they haven't made as much money either. So transportation itself has just got smaller margins. It's got more independent players, smaller players. And so again, I think it will start with the manufacturing, and then eventually as costs come down, it gets normalized, the data is being exchanged, then it can move to the transportation sector. Not that there won't be any transportation companies focused on blockchain and their carbon footprint. There will be. We have to recognize there's lots of independence, there's lots of the different players, and the margins are different than some of the, well brand name known companies. So.
Okay, excellent. So based on what we discussed, what do you think the feasibility would be? And if you do think it's feasible, how long do you think that it would take for, 'cause I know that, it's going to be a phased approach where it might be the larger organizations, adopting it, then you have the smaller and medium organizations. How long do you think it would take if you think it's feasible?
Very good question. I don't have the crystal ball. I would assume that you're looking, 5 years out for manufacturers. And part of the issue when you look at just the carbon measurement is the lack of agreement on how to measure. So that is going to take another year to 2 years just to get people on the same page. What does an audit look like? And maybe 1 to 2 years is actually optimistic. No one likes, the standard better than their own standard, right? So the idea of countries coming together and of there being uniformity, how long will that take? What I'm hoping is we at least come to some basic principles that would allow for measurement with an understanding that it would be refined like anything else. And it may have a certain amount of allocations to it that isn't necessarily ideal. But, if you're making, if you have any product, the core ingredient could be going into multiple things. So, I think before you were talking briefly about a cow, we were talking about a cow, but, different pieces of that cow are used different ways, right? Some's for meat, some's for the hide. It could be, different uses. And so all products have that too. So what's it being used for, right? And so there has to be some amount, it's like a overhead cost. You're going to have some amount of allocations that have to happen as part of this. If there can be agreement on how those get done, what's reasonable, methodologies, then you're going to talk about the blockchain really being able to come in and be that verification piece. So I'm thinking 3 to 5 years. And that may seem long, but it takes a long time for adoption. And again, it's going to be the big companies and then the smaller ones over time, right? And, I think with anything that costs, the big issue will also be how much does this cost, right? So as costs go down, then it becomes more and more feasible and the timeline may move up. But that is always, it has to have an ROI. People aren't going to do something unless there is a return on the money they're investing in it.
Yep. I think that's the big hang up in terms of, just primarily talking about the blockchain, the blockchain technology, artificial intelligence, that's going to save organizations a lot of money. But how much is a blockchain, solution going to save an organization? I think that some people see it as a detriment because now I have to show everything, right? But we talk a lot about zero knowledge proofs. We talked about that at the event that we did at Georgetown, where we can confirm that you're saying what you're saying is indeed true without showing everything, and I think that if supply chain leaders are educated on that first, I think we'll have more acceptance. I won't say embrace. That's a little quick. I think that they'll have more acceptance to actually listen to it more. But I know that we talk about blockchain in a sustainability class. In terms of, I think we have a case study in terms of VeChain. This study is actually for VeChain. But do you have other classes where you talk about artificial technology such as artificial intelligence and blockchain within the program?
Oh, absolutely. Sourcing class, right? Strategic sourcing and contracting. That's been a big topic, both on, how will it, I think from a student perspective, it's how will these technologies change my job? How will they change what I need to know? So actually the last class we had, we were talking about both of the technologies actually. So, you know, and I think you make a good point. With AI, it's relatively cheap in many ways, right? Although we're still, so I think companies are going to see some savings, anything from reducing the workload on code to, you know, being able to replicate things. We're just at the forefront of what will happen with AI. And they're already using it for scouting as suppliers, you know, lots of different ways that you can use that to very easily bring back a large amount of information, sort through it. But it still at this point requires, you know, intervention by humans at some point. When you look at the blockchain, I think that contracts of sizable amount are important, but I think what you were talking about, you kind of hit the nail on the head with the zero knowledge proof, right? The issue is supply chains, and we talk about this, everyone wants to know the tier 2, tier 3, but your manufacturers don't necessarily want you to know that, or if you're a distributor, let me use it that way, because maybe you can go around. Supply chains weren't necessarily built to be fully transparent, both from the risk of costs getting out there to what are the actual ingredients I'm using. Something's proprietary. I've developed a formula. I don't want anyone to know that formula, and I don't want them to know my suppliers. So we have both, when you're looking at corporate social responsibility, whether it's carbon, whether it's making sure there's not forced labor, no matter what it is, the difficulty lies in the fact that supply chains don't necessarily want you to know all their suppliers. So if you can do something where some piece is hidden, meaning the name of the supplier, amounts maybe not as much, price certainly, right? But if you can hide those things but have the other pieces verified without it being, oh well, I can still figure it out without the name, right? I mean, there needs to be a way, and so I think that can be done, and that would help sort of grease the wheels if if it didn't have full transparency. And it may be, using permission blockchains at some point too, where you get permission to see certain things, right? So it's that combo that might happen. I see that in the medical area as being something, there's lots of different use cases. We're talking supply chain and carbon right now, but there's obviously lots of different use cases. And even for the carbon and tracking it, maybe it is permissions, maybe it's not just open, and maybe you only get to see it for, certain products, same thing. You have to de-risk it for the people who are putting the information out there. And to help de-risk it, it may mean that some things have to be anonymous. So I know that goes against the transparency piece, but really you're being transparent about a lot, the part that matters more than the part that doesn't. Although people who want to use it to see that the tier 2 or tier 3 suppliers are financially sound, they do want to know the names, but maybe for carbon, it doesn't matter, right? So that's where you might have even different pieces of information that can be attributed to the same company.
Yeah, and I think you brought up about 4 good points there. So yeah, because like whenever you talk, I mean, and that's the whole thing about different blockchain protocols, in that they're going to have their benefits, their benefits and things like that. So, with VeChain, VeChain was focused on the supply chain industry, right? And and they're doing a lot within the carbon tracking space. Now, you did mention the whole permission blockchain thing, which is going to be a topic of discussion once we actually get leaders in this space. But then there's another protocol that has a number of use cases called Casper. So the Casper protocol. So they're actually, they're saying that, one of the main industries they're trying to address is a supply chain industry, but they're referred to as a hybrid blockchain, where you can pick and choose what information you want to be, transparent, and then what information you don't. But like I said, zero knowledge proofs will actually give you that, based on certain use cases. But natively, Casper is saying that, we're a hybrid blockchain. So, as people, as organizations, come on to these protocols, then we'll actually kind of hash out these particular things. So, again, that's going to be on down the line. So, all right, last question. Probably won't be, but I'll say last question. What challenges do you foresee us having in, tracking, carbon emissions, carbon credits, carbon offsets on a blockchain, in your opinion?
As I've mentioned, just first, the measurability, right? And methodologies. That's the biggest challenge in my mind. And then it's probably, secondly, is getting who's going to audit and how are you validating the auditors. So they may need their own credentials that lie on the blockchain too, to be able to say, yes, I've done X, Y, and Z. I have this methodology. I have this level of training, a way, again, that someone can't rubber stamp. So there's going to be some, it's going to be a cottage industry in a way of just measurement, but then you have to know how do you validate the people who are measuring this, that they're using the same methodology, that they're trained. So I think that could be one of the uses for the blockchain on sustainability as well. And is that a challenge? More that you'll start like anything else with too many and something has to shake it out. So there needs to be some kind of, I don't want to say governing body, but at least a group that is agreeing upon the standards, right? The standards that would be implemented for the measurement of the carbon, and who can, who's trained in it, who's certified in it. And then the challenge, I think, with it actually going on the blockchain is probably a little bit less, other than, as we talked about, being able to possibly make some of it anonymous. I mean, I don't see the actual technology piece, once you have the measurement, as being that much of a roadblock. I think it's just getting people on the same page for the measurement. And then getting that group, even if you have that, who can now do the certifications, they would maybe be the issuers, or utilize the blockchain, to issue that, have the ability to do that, and basically say, yes, I've put this on the blockchain because we've certified, and this product has this much carbon.
Excellent. Thank you for that. So yeah, that's all the questions. That's all the questions that I have. So Linda, thanks once again. Where can people find you? Where can people learn more about your program? Thanks,
Justin. Yeah, well, I'm on LinkedIn. So feel free to reach out, connect with me on LinkedIn. And then the program, they can go to Georgetown's website, Georgetown School of Continuing Studies. And there's a little, you just click on there and you'll see all about us there, and the program and curriculum and faculty. So hope people are, it's a great field. The technology that's coming and impacting this field is just amazing too.
Yep. Great field, great program. And, you'll have a lot of institutions that are, theory based, research based, but, the Georgetown program is practice based. They have a lot of esteemed faculty. They have strong people on the advisory board. One of my close peers, Sherry Hines, is on the advisory board, along with other people with amazing backgrounds in the public and private sector. So check it out. So once again, thank you, and everyone else, until next time.
Thanks, Justin.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.